Hi everyone, welcome back to video number 2. If you followed video number 1, you should be at this stage, which is having an imported SES model into Blender. In this case, this is uh, the American Truck Simulator stock box trailer, and this is actually the chassis. This is a 53-foot chassis with the Ford axles on it. So before we get started, modifying this chassis, I thought I'd give you a little bit tour of the Blender desktop. So let's go ahead and hide this model real quick. So to hide everything, you just hit Control and you just hide everything in the model. Okay, so if you'll notice, you have a red, green, and you also have a blue axis, and the cursor is at the center of the axis, and this is actually referred to as center of the world. And everything that you import into Blender, any models, wheels, rims, anything will come in at this cursor, this red and white ring. That is your cursor. And so when you import the chassis into Blender, it will come in at this cursor here, the root object will. And let's go over a few things up here on your menu tab. You do have your SCS tools, and the ones that you'll be using probably most is this visibility tools, to where you can turn different objects on and off. If you like to work with lamps, this lamp switcher tool you'll probably use quite a bit. Uh, next you have the layout, and there's really no difference between the layout and the modeling. You can use either one to model. It's just the layout has a timeline for video. So if you're making Blender animations, because you got to remember this, Blender is a 3D animation software, and we're not going to use 70% of the features in Blender. So in this layout, you can still model all your vehicles, uh, but the only difference between the layout and the modeling is you don't have the timeline for animation. And that's pretty much the only difference. We don't use sculpting that much when we're modifying vehicles in Blender. We do use this UV editing quite a bit, so you'll get really good at using this panel here. We don't use a lot of texture paint or shading or animation. None of these tabs we use too much. So the most common is going to be your modeling screen and your UV editing. And I use those two for about 90% of everything I do in Blender, using those two. Every now and then layout, unless I forget to change modeling. And then over here on your right, you have, this is called your scene collection. You do have a camera right here. That's for recording animation, much like a studio camera. We don't use that a whole lot in modeling, so we'll delete that. And then this other one is light. We don't use light, so we'll delete that. And now all we're left with is our actual chassis. And so let me put the chassis. Okay, so now we have our chassis visible in our layout. And this chassis is made up of individual parts. And these parts are represented by the upside down triangle. And if we click on each part, it highlights on our work area which part we'll be working on. So we can go through each one of these, and you can see we can highlight the parts. You can do it that way, or you can just click on the part and then it lights up over here in the in your layers panel. All right, so let's talk about a little bit about moving things around. So in order to move every part within this chassis, you have what's called a root object, and the way you think of a root object is much the same way as if you were building a real car. Okay, so the real car is built up of assemblies. So you could have a chassis assembly, you could have an engine assembly, a transmission assembly, and so forth. And each one of those assemblies have individual parts in it. So if you have an engine assembly, you've got spark plugs, you've got heads, oil pan, things like that. That's all part of the engine assembly. And there are some things like the radiator, so to speak. Radiator could either fall under your chassis or it could fall under the engine. But those assemblies is what we call root objects. And so when we import that PIM into Blender, we're importing the root object, but with that root object, we import all the parts that fall underneath that root object. And you can call these parts or you can call these objects. They mean exactly the same thing. So we can go down, we can hide all the parts just by clicking the eyeball. And then we can look at each part individually. Like so this whole assembly falls under part number 0 or piece 0. And then if we click on other parts, like here are our bolts for that assembly. And here, this is actually, because it's less detailed, if you look at this and with materials, this appears to be that purplish blue color. This is what's known as a shadow. If you don't have these in the game, then the sunlight looks like it shines right through your object. So when the trailer is traveling down the road in the game, if you do not have these in here, then the individual parts will not cast a shadow on the roadway. It views the part as being invisible. So you can see this a lot in some of the mods that I've seen, especially on like flatbed trailers where they don't get the shadows quite right. So if they're hauling like a load of pipes on the flatbed trailer, you can see the shadow of the flatbed trailer, but the shadow of the pipes is missing. So if you look at the shadow, it looks like you're moving an empty trailer, where in fact you're moving a trailer load of pipes. But that's what these shadows are, and they always appear to be this purplish black, almost like a bruise. So when you go into your visibility panel and you want to see all your shadows, to make sure that all your shadows are correct, do you have a shadow part visibility icon here? So you just click on it, and then all your shadows associated with this box trailer comes out. All right, so we'll go ahead and we'll just hide the shadow. So to hide it, you just hit Control and click, and it hides all the parts associated with the shadow. So if we're moving on, and let's say that, so here's a little piece, and let's say that you'd like to move this piece. The hotkey for move is G. And think of it, G is for grab. So if you hit G and you move it, you can move it anywhere you want. I always want to try to move it along the axis, but you can move it any way you want. And if you move something accidentally, just right click and it'll put it back in its original position. So the way I normally move these, I'll go to what's called orthographic mode. So you can go to orthographic mode using this little wheel up here, or you can use the hotkeys 1, 3, and 7. So this is 1. What you can see on this is the minus Y axis, so you're looking at it from the back. And then if you go control 1, you go to the regular Y axis, means you're looking at it from the front. And then you can hit hotkey 3, which you're looking at it from the X side. And if you hit control 3, you're looking at it from the minus X side. And if you hit 7, you're looking at it from the Z axis, and that means you're looking at it from the top. And then if you hit control 7, means you're looking at everything from the bottom. So when you're moving things, you normally want to be in the orthographic mode. So when you hit G, it automatically you hit G and then Y, and you can move it along the Y axis, or you can hit Z and move it along the Z axis. You can't really move it along the X axis, not in this mode. And like I said, if you forget where it is, you can just right click and it'll put it back where it was. All right, so that's how you move things around in Blender. You use a G, and then you either use X, Y, or Z to move it along the axis. To copy the part, let's say that I want a duplicate of this part, and I want to put it over on the other side of the trailer. I can hit Shift D, which makes a copy of the part, and I can hit X to move it along the X axis, and I just made a copy of it. So this really comes in handy if you're wanting to put in extra tanks, and you like the tank, you like the tank size, you just want a second tank, you can duplicate that part. I use that quite a bit in my modding. All right, and let's see. That's for right now. That's probably all the things that you're going to need to know about. The rest of them, as we modify this trailer, we'll look at a few more. But let's go ahead and let's put our trailer back in. And like I said, this is just the chassis of our vehicle. And if you look at it from the top, it looks like it's invisible. And there's a reason for that. If you look at it from the bottom, you have the texture. And like I said, all these represented by the upside down triangles. These are all your parts. And then if you look at these are your model locators and your collision locators. And when you put the vehicle in American Truck Simulator and all the parts start attaching to this chassis, it knows how to attach itself based on the model locators. So what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and build the SCS box trailers using all the assemblies, just like we would on an assembly line. And the way that we place the assemblies on this chassis depends on this cursor. So let's go ahead and we'll import the box for this chassis. So we'll go to File, and we'll go to SCS Game Object. And let's see, we're on the chassis. So we want to go to the body folder. And because we have the 53-foot chassis, we're going to pick the 53-foot box. Okay, so the box just imported, but it is nowhere in the right location for this chassis. And the reason for that is it came in, the root came in right where the cursor is. So if you scroll up, the root for this assembly, this box 53, it came in right where the cursor is, which is not where it needs to be in order to fall into place on this chassis. So what we'll do, we'll just undo that real quick. So we go up here to edit and we hit undo until the box goes away. So what we need to do, we need to find the locator. So let me put the chassis back on. And what we need to do, we need to find the locator for the box. So here is the body locator. So if we turn it on, it's called body. So we need the root object to come in at this model locator. So in order for a root object to come in at this model locator, we got to move the cursor to that model locator. So in order to do that, we highlight it. So we select it, and we know it's selected because it turns kind of yellow in it. So if we select something else, you see it turns it off. But if we select it, it turns yellow. In order to move the cursor here, you hit Shift S, and then that brings up like a pie selection chart. And what you want to do, you want to move the cursor to selected, or you can just use Option 2. Either way. So you can go Shift S, Option 2, or Shift S and then select this. And now our cursor is at our body model locator. So now when we import the body to the trailer, it should come in, the root object should come in right where this model locator is. So let's do that. Okay, so now the body is aligned with the chassis and looks like it's aligned correctly. But let's go ahead and we'll turn off. Well, we'll just select all the visible parts of the body and the chassis. Okay, so now you see you got all your trim, and you've got the body sides and the roof, and they all look like they're in the correct spot. Excuse me. Now, if you look at this body looks a little bit weird. You can see how different it, when we rotate around, it looks like it's trying to display several different things. Well, that's because it's using several textures. If you notice in SCS, you can either select an insulated body, or you can select a dry van body, or you can select a reefer body. So all three of those texture files are trying to display at one time, and that's why it looks really weird. And those are called variants. And SCS, it uses variants so you can have several different models within one root. So in this case, the root is this 53-foot box, and we can have a dry van model, and we can have a reefer model, and we can have an insulated model, all within this one box 53 root. In order to look at the variants, you just click on the root, and over at the bottom right hand side of your screen, you'll see this little yellowish orange box. You just click on it, and you scroll down to you can see you have SCS parts, SCS variants, and SCS looks. So if you click on the variants, it shows you all the variants associated with this box. You have a default variant, you have a dry van variant, a reefer variant, and an insulated variant. And then you have a group of parts. So in this parts, you have a share, you have a dry van parts list, you have an insulated parts list, and you have a reefer parts list. So let's hide everything, and I'll show you how those lists work. So if we hit Control, we hide everything. And now if we only want to see what's being shared among all the variants, we can just hit this little eye icon, And now it displays everything that is shared amongst all four of the variants. So in this case, the cargo, all your collision locators, and uh, this is probably your shadow is shared, and then you have these three pieces right here are parts: piece 4, piece 5, and piece 6. So if you want to see what each one of it is, piece 4 is your reflective tape along the side. Piece 5 is your trim, your metal trim, and the reflector is a two-part reflector, so piece 4 and piece 6 are all part of the reflector, and then piece 5 is your trim. All right, so if you want to hide your share, just click the eye again, and it'll put every part up there. Then you click it again, and then it'll hide everything. So if we want to look at the parts under a dry van, we just click the eye, and here is the side for the dry van, and we got the sides, the roof, and you notice how the rivets uh, run a certain way for the dry van, and to hide the dry van, you just click it again. For the insulated, we just click the eye, and here's the insulated van body and how it looks like there's individual panels, insulated panels that go down the side. So we'll hide the insulated, and then for the reefer, uh, notice how it has the horizontal, uh, I guess, ridges, and then the vertical rivets. So this is the reefer side. Now, if you want to, if you want to look at two together, let's say you want to put the share in. So we're looking at the share, and then we want to see how a reefer body looks with the share. Just hit shift and then click on the eye, and then it'll bring in. And then if you want to see the insulated, I'm sorry, you don't need to hit shift. All you got to do is just press the eye. And that's it. So the parts is different than the variants. The variants refer to the model as a whole, and the parts is what makes up that model. So let's go ahead, and we're going to let's put everything back into Blender. All right. So now we're displaying everything again. So that's why that looks a little messed up. We got the insulated, the reefer, and dry van. So we're going to hide everything but the reefer. Okay, so now we have the chassis, and we have the reefer box displayed. But you'll notice on the ends, you have nothing on the end or front wall, and we have no bumper and no rear door. Okay, so we're going to continue to build this trailer out of our assembly. So now we have the reefer body selected. So now we need to, let's put a front wall on here. So we go back to our chassis, and our front wall is actually called in SCS a front body. So we click on the front body, the model locator, and we'll move the cursor to that model locator. So we do that by hitting Shift S, and we go cursor to selected, and now we have the cursor on our front body, and now we are going to import the front wall or front body. So that's located in the accessory folder. and we look for a folder called the front body, because they usually match the folder and the model locator names usually match. Not always, but usually. And in this case, we want the King Reefer front wall. So we import that, and it comes in where the cursor is located. And also, you'll notice that when the front wall came in, the reefer unit, it also came in with its own collision blocks, and it also come in with its own shadow. All right, so let's go ahead. In this case, we don't want to go back and re-hide our different bodies for our trailer. So what we're going to do, we're just going to hide the shadow and the collision blocks. So remember that we use control to do the opposite. So when we go to visibility for model locators, we want to hit control, and that hides the shadows and any model locators associated with this reefer unit. Now, when I first started modeling, one of the things uh, that I wanted to do was have a chrome unit or a paintable grille. So in this trailer, we will be eventually doing the same thing here. We're going to make this reefer unit. We're going to put a chrome body on it, and we're going to also make this this grill outline. We're going to make it paintable so it'll match whatever we use to paint the side of the box. And we can also change the decals up here to I think Turbo King is not a real name. I can't remember exactly what the name of that reefer unit is, but we'll put the exact name of that reefer unit, make it a little bit more realistic. Okay, so moving on, we still have the back of our trailer to build. Uh, so we go back to our chassis again, and I think this is called the rear body. So here's our rear body model locator, and we'll click on that. And remember, we'll hit Shift S, and we're going to move our cursor to the selected. And then we want to import the rear body. So we look for the rear body, and here it is, the rear body folder. And you can select between a chrome door, roll-up door, lift gate, simple arrow. For this case, since we're working with a reefer, we're going to put the chrome door up. Okay, and now you'll notice something happened a little bit different on this rear body. When it came in not attached to the body like it was supposed to be, and it also came in where it was backwards. And there is a reason for that. And the reason for it is, if you'll notice on this model locator, the arrow is pointed backwards. Okay, so most all your other arrow, if you look at your, let's go back and let's see, let's find another model locator here. So we'll go back. Let's go back to our body model locator. Now, let's see. I'm trying not to hide the trailer. I'm looking for a locator that I don't have to hide the trailer. May not be able to find one, but let's look at the front body. Okay, so here's the front body, and you'll notice that the arrow is pointed forward for the front body, and the arrow is pointed to the back for the rear body. And there's a good reason why that's like that. So when you go into the game and you go into your garage area and you're there to select your options, you notice that each one of your options, you have a target spot So when you click on it, it lists all the options for that one particular accessory. So in this case, if you wanted to change this reefer unit on the front, I think there's like 2 different reefer options that you can pick from. So when you see that little spot, that target area in the garage, that target area, how it's visible to you is based on this arrow. So usually when you go into the garage, the trailer is maybe facing forward or facing toward you. So if they was to take this model locator and rotate it 180 degrees so the arrow would face to the rear, the only way that spot would be visible is if you was looking at the rear of the trailer. So you wouldn't be able to select the reefer unit except when you were looking at the rear of the trailer. So that's why they have it facing forward. But in the same token, if the model locator was facing forward, the only way you would be able to see your rear door options would be if you were looking at the front of the trailer. And you don't want to do that. You want to be able to come to the rear of the trailer and select your rear door option. And you also want it to be non-visible from the front of the trailer. So that's why that arrow is pointed this way. But in doing your model locator that way, your part imports in reverse. So it's pretty simple to correct if you're working on it, and that is to take your root object, and you want to always, if you're going to move an assembly, always move your root object. So we select the root object, and the way I always do it, I go to the Z or orthographic view, and I hit R for rotate, and then I want to rotate it 180 degrees. So after I hit R, I just type in 180 and enter, and then it rotates that whole assembly 180 degrees. Now don't make the mistake that I did when I first started modeling. I put the door on here correctly and turned my model locator around, and then when I go into the game, you can always guess what happens is uh, once it loads into the game, then the door is backwards. So you you can't rotate, you can't put this anything that you want to be visible from the rear of the trailer, the little spot. Now remember, we're talking about the target. So if your target is facing to the rear, then your assembly also has to be reversed when you export for it to be correct when it goes into the game. And that was a concept that was fairly hard for me to learn in the beginning. But that's just the way it works. If your model locator is turned around, then your door has to be reversed for it to appear correctly in the game. And you'll also notice on some of your trucks, like your side skirts, this model locator can also be located 90 degrees. So you can point this model locator arrow anywhere. You can point it along the x-axis, along the y-axis, along the z-axis, and along the and you can point it backwards along the y-axis. So remember, if you're going to take this model locator and turn it 90 degrees to the side of the trailer, your part also has to be 90 degrees before it will align correctly in the game. Now, I hope that makes sense to you, but you'll probably see that on some trucks. They'll come in 90 degrees sideways, and that is the reason. All right, so we got the rear door on, and we still need the rear bumper. So we go to the rear bumper, and here is our model locator for rear bumper. So remember, we got to put our cursor there, Shift S, cursor to selected, and then we will import our bumper. So we find the rear bumper, and here it is. And let's do an exclusive. So we'll pick the exclusive bumper and we'll import it in. And notice that it comes in the exact same way, reversed. And so we have to rotate that around 180 degrees. So I go to my Z axis, and then I find the bumper root, which is exclusive, and I make sure it's highlighted. And then I hit R for rotate, and then 180. And now our bumper is in the correct position. So let's go ahead and we'll hide that shadow. So we go to visibility tools, and we hit control, and we hide shadow. All right, so you notice when we imported this rear bumper, we also have some other locators that came in with the lights. These are model locators, but they also have hookup values, and you'll also see one right here. This is your license plate hookup, and these are your lighting hookups. So that unit folder, when we created our base files and we put that unit folder into our base files folder, all those hookup values come from that unit folder. And if we go to the exclusive, and you look at, these are all the hookup values. Now you don't see them all because they're on top of each other. So you only see 6, but there are much more than 6. Because you have a different hookup value for a right turn signal, a left turn signal. You'll have a hookup value for a lamp. You'll have a hookup value for a brake light. So those are all located here. So if you click on this exclusive and we look at this hookup value, when you click on it, you can see that it lights up on this lamp here. And then if you go to the objects tab, which is this little orange square, and you scroll down, here's that model locator, and this is the model name, ML388, and then you have ML388, and then this is your hookup. And if you hold your cursor over it, you can kind of, and they code these a little bit, but you can kind of figure out what it is. This is a vehicle flare, and it's a rear lamp. And I'm not sure what the NOLGH stands for. But if we studied the unit file, I'm sure that we could probably figure it out. So if we click on another one, now this one right here, so this is model locator 389, and you can see that it's a vehicle flare. It's red, and it's a left blink, so that's the left turn signal. And this next one, this is model locator 390, and you can tell that this is the a vehicle flare or vehicle lamp, and this is your brake light. So that's kind of how your light system works. There, we'll get into lighting a little bit later on. That's not all you need for your lights, but there's different hookups. You can have like LED lights. You can have incandescent lights. There's all different types, and then you can go into the unit files and you can change the lights. You can change the intensity and you can change a lot of things about the lights in the unit files, and we'll get a little bit more in that later on. But for right now, let's go ahead and and we'll hide all those model locators. And then this one down here, okay, this is your rear license plate. So the naming, I think it looks for that naming, so I always keep that name the same. And you should have one on, let's see, yeah, you should have one on your chassis. So this, let me see where, okay. So you've got another one on your chassis, and the license plate's kind of weird, and this took me a long time to figure out too. Was if you do not have the license plate on your chassis, it will not appear on your bumper. So yeah, this I really fought with this for a long time before I kind of figured out what was happening. Remember, there wasn't a whole lot of YouTube videos out when I started modeling, and this was a very frustrating part for me, was to figure out these license plates, because sometimes they show up, sometimes they wouldn't. And what I concluded was that the license plate has to be somewhere on the chassis uh, before it will show up on an accessory. So even you can change the location. Like if I want to put the license plate underneath the rear doors, I can move this model locator and add it to this part here. Uh, but if I didn't have the license plate on the actual chassis, it would never show up. So you can make some modifications that way. You can move it out to the side. You know, if you want to fill this in with lights and you didn't want a license plate there, you can move it over. So anyway, now that we have our box trailer built, so on the Discord site, write down how you would like to see this trailer modified. So we can modify this trailer any way you want. So we can add parts to it. Uh, Even if it's silly, we can do anything we want to with this trailer. So uh, I want y'all to be active in the modding of this trailer. So tell me exactly what you want in the Discord uh, general section of the Discord server, and we'll start modeling. We'll start modeling this trailer. So anything goes. You just let me know what you want, or what you want to see, and that'll complete this video for tonight. If you have any issues anywhere, please just take a screenshot like you normally have and just post it in the Discord section. And I'll catch you next time. Thanks.